cut their head off and stick their head in the cavity where the bowels were.
What would they do?
And they came in with a flamethrower and literally burned him alive.
How would they torture him?
And his body was impaled on those punji stakes.
And so the premise of the Vietnam War was
we knew that the Vietcong, and you heard about all the legends. The Vietcong is just the peasant fighter, the farmer by day, fighter by night, defending what he thinks is his country. They don't talk about any of the NVA, the communist people that are supporting them, that are in country, that are with a majority of the Vietcong units. And so we knew, and of course, when we go through some of the Special Forces training, we're told about the communist infiltrations, told about how they're operating. Of course, we had horror stories about what the Vietcong would do to a village or to people that weren't friendly.
what would they do?
You name it. We had one of our Medal of Honor recipients had, he was in a Special Forces operation. They had gone into a village and worked with the people, the children there for a period of time. And it was, strictly a hearts and minds operation. They would go in, the medics would go in, always do sick call every day, work with the children. They built some schools, other training facilities, things like this. At some point, the Vietcong came in and killed everybody, every man, woman, and child, to send a message to any other village that would think about working with the Green Berets or Americans. They were just profoundly cruel and heartless that way. And that shook John.
How would they compare to like a modern day
Terrorist?
like ISIS, Al Qaeda, were there beheadings? They burn people alive today in Syria? They're crucifying people and shooting them in the back of the head.
The Christians there were hurt. I don't know if they would be specifically targeted.
I don't mean just the Christians. I know,
but here, so with
were
the
they as
Vietcong,
gruesome, burning
yes,
people alive?
They would do it all. During the Tet Offensive, in the town of Hue, which is the old imperial capital, they had killed a bunch of civilians. Anybody who was educated, nurses, doctors, they took a bunch out and killed them. And they had a mass grave, which received not enough publicity. But this is during the Tet Offensive. And we had other cases where they would torture people to get them to come over to their side. If they didn't, they would kill them. And for me, when we get...
How would they torture them?
Well, you name it. They would do the fingernail thing, beat them up, get them to come around. If they didn't, then they would just shoot them. And, of course, the guys that were in country, the A-camp guys, they always had to worry about booby traps. Even if you saw the movie, The Green Beret, they had those big punji ambush things where if you walked in it, it would pick you up and then a rope would pick you up and your weight of your body would swing you into like punjies that were all coated with animal dung. So when you slammed into it, like in the movie where they picked up the one guy and his body was impaled on those punji stakes, and they had punji pits, and if anybody stepped in it, of course you had the infection off of those. And in my case with Paul Villarosa, our hero, the guy that helped us get through training, he ran the first mission out of FOB-4, his fourth tour of duty. He ran a mission into Laos. They ran into a heavy unit. He was wounded, and at some point, he was captured. They killed several other team members, but they kept one American alive, an SF guy we never knew who it was. But Villarosa, they got him, and they came in with a flamethrower and literally burned him alive at the stake. And they killed a couple of other Vietnamese. They torched them too. So when we got done our briefing, we heard about Paul Villarosa. And it was like, that was culture shock. to the max, because he was our hero. This is a guy that did 3 tours, survived all that, and his first mission out of FOB4, killed and tortured.
Wow.
And of course, you always had the story. We had teams where men who had been wounded, they would disembowel them, cut their head off, and stick their head in the cavity where the bowels were.
Jeez.
And the other part was sometimes they would cut their dick off and stick it in their mouth, and then put that in. Now, I never saw that personally.
Any of that?
Say again?
You never saw any of that?
Nothing like that. But we heard about it. And it was from our guys.
Before you went, you heard about it.
Some before, and then some while we were there. Other teams had come up against.
And so the premise of the Vietnam War was the NVA and the Vietcong pushing communism into Vietnam.
Right.
And so where does Laos and Cambodia come into play?
Well, they were, quote, neutral countries. In the beginning, we had Operation White Star, which had Green Beret teams in Laos. But under that change of plan of converting to Mac V Sog, Kennedy, they had an accord of some kind of a political agreement that America would pull any and all combat troops out of Laos and out of Cambodia. And the North Vietnamese and the communists would do the same thing. They were all there and they agreed to this accord. Well, of course, the communists are just lying douchebags, as we all know. And publicly they say, yeah, we're out. Well, in 1957, they had started to reopen the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which went from Hanoi down to Vietnam, across, down through Laos into Cambodia. And there'd be trails that would come in to South Vietnam. And that would be the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And that would be the way that supplies the manpower. And as early as 1957, they began working on it. By 1959, the Politburo in Hanoi said, we are going to form an official unit for the Ho Chi Minh Trail. It'll be 559, May 1959. So that's when it was formed. They had a colonel in charge of it, other people. So from 1959 into the 1960s, they already had rudimentary supplies and manpower coming south, agents, etc. And so we would go, not we, but they would go through that, expanding. And so then the Air Force would start targeting the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And it wasn't just a trail. It would be different branches coming down and going into the country, into South Vietnam. And that's what that was designed for. And so by the time I arrived,
before we go there,
no, sure.
What was the pulse of the country about Vietnam at the time? No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.